He was a full 20 years younger than me. I still didn't know much about him. To put it more bluntly, 3 days ago I didn't even know he existed. Of course, it's not unusual to be unaware of certain other people's existence in the world, of many people's even. But the fact I was now responsible for his body, so suddenly and out of the blue, was bound to cause me some anxiety. Death was going after people half my age and without any preliminaries at all. Still, that in itself didn't bother me more than listening uneasily to death counts on the morning news. I think what horrified me beyond anything else was the way he died. How wretched to die like that and at that age, in one's bedroom, quietly, on the bed, without even one person to witness what had happened. It wasn't a death that seemed very well suited to our times either. For better or worse, we seem to be obliged to take death seriously these days, to consider it an unmitigated evil that can't be justified or understood. The poor guy might have died in slightly grander fashion. Something that wouldn't have been so hard on his loved ones. He could have met his end alongside a few other people. Even if nothing had tied them together but their shared death, he would at least have had some company, which is not nothing. In fact, it's been very popular lately. Or he could have died in front of a few witnesses, so that the details of his final moments, recounted again and again, could have brought some comfort to his family, or added just that bitter sweetness necessary to keep his memory fresh and vivid for as long as possible. His death could have been preceded by some sort of suffering. That way it would have presented itself as a respite to him and a relief to those around him. At the very worst, he could have been killed in a car accident or something like that, and then we could shake our heads at the absurdity of fate. Even that sort of senseless cruelty is a thing of some consequence and provokes a gasp and a hand clap to the heart in those who hear about it. None of this would have made much difference to the deceased, it's true. As far as we know, the dead don't suffer from the cruelty of death anywhere near as much as the living do. Those wretched individuals are expected to gather up the severed parts of whatever's been destroyed by the dead person's departure, then carry on living as if nothing at all has happened. It's a miracle more impressive than birth and no less tragic than death itself. I was an especially unlucky living person who, by some twist of fate, had been given the arduous task of contending with the death of a person entirely unknown to me. I couldn't blame anyone but myself. One night, around midnight, I'd got a call from Ayman in Cairo that was the start of everything, and I could have refused outright to get involved. I could simply have said no, or wriggled out of it with one of the little white lies I'd got into the habit of using since I came to live in London. But you can't underestimate embarrassment and the things it'll make you do. It was the first and only time Ayman had come to me needing something. In fact, nobody from Cairo had ever asked me for any favours of any kind in the time since I'd left. This was my only chance in 10 years to prove that my being in London had some purpose or was of any use to anyone. It was a combination of hubris and shame, and it was bound to lead to disaster. After a short opening gambit in which he assured me I wasn't obliged to help him and that he'd understand completely if I said no, Ayman had asked me to go the following morning to a hospital in East London, collect the dead body of a 20-year-old man, and make arrangements for his burial. That was it. He didn't give any further details. These are the opening pages of On the Greenwich Line, a work of literary fiction by Egyptian author Shady, which was published in Arabic by Dodeline in 2019. The protagonist is an Egyptian immigrant who's lived in London for many years and works as a housing officer for the local council. He knows all about the absurdities of racism, austerity and bureaucracy in the UK, he just doesn't think they concern him. Until the fateful day his life collides with that of Riyadh, a young Syrian refugee, and he's forced to acknowledge just how much he has in common with so many others who've fallen through the cracks. This novel, a bestseller at the 2020 Cairo Book Fair, is a minutely observed and gently devastating story of London and its lonely inhabitants. Louise came to attention with a groundbreaking first novel, The Lord's Ways, which recounted the multi-generational saga of a Christian family in Egypt through the confessions of a young man trying to obtain a marriage license. His third book, A Brief History of Creation in Eastern Cairo, which unfolds during a breathless few hours of armed confrontation between security forces and Islamists and is based on real events which took place in 1989, has just appeared this year. Louise is a bold, exciting author, and his work is crying out to be translated into English.